Discover Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Samich and Mr. Stress-Free, Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
Welcome to Stress-Free Living. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm Ray Samish, and it is my first honor and privilege to introduce to all of you my longtime radio colleague, co-host of the show, and my spiritual brother, Ratanjit Sandhi. Ratanjit, how are you this fine day?
Wonderful, Ray. How are you?
Excellent, thank you. Surrounded here by friends and kind of family members here, a part of our Stress-Free Living family that have joined us from around the world. It's so great to be with all of them and with you. And Ratanjit, I have an interesting number of things that have happened to me over the last week or so that really provoked this particular topic. And without going into full details right now, it just seemed that nothing was random. It just seemed that any place that I was at, any moment in time, any conversation, any encounter with another person just seemed to be so ideal. It just seemed like I was there to help the people that needed to be helped. Somebody that happened to be in front of me or next to me was able to give me the answer I needed. Whatever it was, it seemed like nothing was random. Like everything fell into place so perfectly. And it made me think about that. All the times in my life that things shouldn't have happened the way they did, should not have, you know, things shouldn't have come together. It was so coincidental. And yet, looking back on all the decades of my life, those coincidences were extremely important in shaping the flow of my life. So I ask you your opinion on this big topic. Is randomness real? Are there things that just happen by randomness and coincidence? Or do you believe that life is kind of pre-planned, that destiny is predetermined, and that what happens to us in life is ultimately controlled by the bigger one?
You know, there's nothing scientifically, if you look at from science standpoint, nothing is random. Everything is a consequence of something which is happens. So it's like driving a car. If you don't control the steering wheel, it's going to run into a tree or another car. So is that random? Not really, because you lost control of the steering. And you are going someplace, and if your mind, or you got a phone call and suddenly you wanted to be, it directed you to go to someplace else. So originally what you planned to be someplace, and now you can change it. You can go to another place. And, you know, basically it's all cause and effect, because that's what we learn through science. And learning through science, we develop technology, which is all predictable. It happens exactly how we expect, until something else comes into play and changes the condition. So basically, nothing is random. Now, whenever we have less information, less understanding, and we do not understand why things happen, and in the absence of understanding why things happen, we often call it random. It happens randomly. It's a word we use when we are not able to explain, when we are not able to understand, when we don't have the right information, or we don't understand the right rules and regulation of that situation. So basically, everything happens planned, but you have the energy, you have the wisdom, you have the power to change it, right?
But let's take one of the things that happened on this last. It was a trip that I was on. Was sitting next to a particular person on the plane. You know, when you pick your seat when you're flying, you say, I want to be in, you know, maybe I want to be in an aisle, which I do because I'm big, so I want to be in an aisle. So other than that, that's the only criteria. So I look to see what aisle seats are available and I pick one. It's pretty random, except the fact that I want to be in the aisle. But I pick one. I have no idea who's going to be next to me, who's going to be across from me, or whatever. And I do that. And you know, in this last week, I happened to sit next to a person who was from another country, who was 30 years younger, who apparently would have nothing in uh, in line with my values, my thoughts, my history, all those kind of things. And yet we found so many items that were identical in terms of things that I had been through 30 years earlier and things that she was encountering now. It was just such a marvelous conversation that we had. And I really felt that I was able to add tremendous perspective and value to her life because being 30 years older and having gone through those things and lived through it. And I walked away from that, very enlightening experience, very motivating, gratifying experience. And I says, how did that happen? How did how did the random choosing of my seat and the random choosing of her seat, that to your point earlier, that wasn't facilitated by any plans. I mean, it was as random as you can get, two strangers coming together. I mean, even people can say that about choosing their spouse that they've been with for 50 years or 60 years. They randomly met. I randomly met my wife of 46 years. How do you say that that was caused by science and it was predictable if you look at it? There's no predictability for that.
Because we don't have all the knowledge which we possess. There is another, there are two types of forces at work. There are many. Basically, you can classify them into two classes. One is a physical force, which we control. We know that we apply this force and we can change, like you can steer a car steering wheel or gas or put accelerator, and you can accelerate the car or slow and you can turn the car. Those are all physical.
Right.
But now there is another, supposing you are very upset and you are looking for solution. You are doing you are God-fearing person, you are praying, you are doing all those things, and suddenly a solution appears in front of you. Now, if we are religious, our religions tell us that nothing happens without God's consent, right? But
I
we
don't know if
don't,
it's God's consent. I don't know if nothing happens without God, but I
yeah,
don't know if that means God's consent.
God, without God, or without God's desire to do things, or God's but we never know where the God exists. We think the God exists in the sky, some older person, and we controls everything, all the things. Whereas the real God exists within you, which empowers you, which enlivens you. Your human body, when it dies, it lays there dead. What is missing? The life, the power which enlivens the human body, which is basically the universal power. Basically, it is God. You can call it God. So when you are so intensely desiring something, you are connecting to that power. And that power can make situation happen. So maybe this lady you met was upset or was feeling some difficulty in life and was looking for somebody to give her a direction, which you did. And eventually she felt much better, right?
Yes.
So somehow her pain and her suffering, her intensity was asking for the solution. She was connecting to that power to ask for a solution. And that is what happened, although it appears to be random. But this was not random. That's why we say there is a power in prayers. There are things which happen to us without any understanding of our worldly wisdom, right? They all happen because there are different forces at work. And those forces are connected to the universal power. Ultimately, the power is within you. So once you decide that I'm going to do this, you have seen many cases, many examples. Somebody has injured and become completely invalid. He cannot use arms or legs, or the body doesn't work. And they have internal desire. So I'm going to not give up. I'm going to somehow make it work. And many of them become Olympic champions afterwards. So they defy the science, known science. And there have been, facts that medicines, when they test the new medicines, and when they have a group of 1,000 or 10,000 people who are trying those medicines, and many of those are given placebo. And amazing thing is, many of those people who are on placebo, which is basically a sugar pill, not the real medicine, and they are cured because in their mind, they are they're activating the power within them. And that power is making something which is uncomprehended by our human wisdom, right?
I wanted to say something in the beginning of the show, and I jumped right into it. I wanted to say that this was very much an opinion show. This is after 30 wonderful years of having conversations with you. You seem to have a lot of answers. Your clarity on applying spiritual applications has allowed you to really give me many, many answers in my life and in other people's lives. This one I think is more opinion based. I don't know if there is an absolute answer to this, but I really wanted your opinion. I really wanted to know what you think about this particular topic. And so as a lead to what you just said in terms of maybe I guess there's two different ways I want to go on this one, and they're both so good. I'm not sure which way we want to take first. The idea that we could be the vessel that is answering somebody else's need is pretty empowering and pretty overwhelming if you think about it. If that person that I was talking with on the plane had this need for clarity, had this need for answers, maybe she was even praying for them, I don't know, but at least it was in her heart and in her mind that she needed to get some clarity. And if the universe had me sit next to her so that through me, some of the answers could be given, which I don't personally take credit for because I was simply displaying what had happened to me. So it's not through any greatness on my part, just again, as kind of a vessel. It's amazing to think that we each have that ability, that we're empowered by the divine to be able to be somebody else's answer, to be somebody else's solution, to be somebody else's light when they are very much in darkness. Do you believe that's the way it's supposed to be? I mean, we think so much about what we need. Is this evidence that what we need really is to be somebody else's solution, to be the vessel for somebody else to have a better life?
It's very important to realize this what I'm going to say now, that we have mentioned on this show many times that we must recognize the three sides of us: the human body and the intellectual brain and the power which enlivens the human body. Now, human brain is like a computer. If the human body runs the computer, human body knows that it is going to die, it needs food, it is a separate entity. So it is infected by fear, insecurity, ego, lust, and greed, right? And that is what is going to control. So if you are in the human body mode and answering these questions to somebody, you are going to basically exhibit your superiorness, your knowledge, your ego. But if your brain is run by the universal power within you, then what your conversation with other person is basically pure, and many times you don't even know the answer which is coming out of your mouth.
Right.
And you are amazed. Wow, that's what I said?
Yeah.
Remember our shows, earlier shows, and when I listened to those shows, I was dumbfounded, because some of the stories which I told on the shows, I never knew them. So it is very important to realize. So again, we are not run by our knowledge. We are run by our habits. So growing up, we unknowingly gets into this habit of our brain or computer being run by our body mode. So that's why most of us are part in fear, greed, and ego. That's why we are hurt very easily. We are in our conversation, we are basically, when two people are talking, most of the time, either they are talking about their past or what they have done, what, they are showing their superiority, their ego, or they're complaining. So when you are in the oneness mode, when you are your brain power is run by the universal force, then basically your conversation is different. You are not complaining, you are not showing your ego, you are only on making a difference. All right? I think you need to take a break.
We do, but yeah, we do. I'm going to have to gather my thoughts here because there's so many different ways that we can go with this conversation. Talking today about randomness. Is there such a thing as randomness? When you sit down next to somebody and have a good conversation, was that already pre-designed and predetermined? Or do we have control over our life? We're going to definitely continue this conversation when we come back on this edition of Stress Free Living. Stay with us. All right, we have a quick 90 seconds. If anybody would like to ask a question or place a comment up there for me to talk with Ratanjit about, now's your time.
We have some new guests.
Yeah, welcome to those that joined us just a little bit late. Good to have you all.
Any quick questions?
Hi, Rika. Good to see you. Where's your little girl today?
She's resting. We just got home from a trip, so everyone's in rest mode.
Another trip. Well, good to have you. Thank you. Any thoughts?
So Ray,
Go ahead.
Your story of meeting someone on the plane, I've had those experiences myself, and I don't think sitting there is random. I think it's all meant to be so that you could have that experience and touch others. And it was probably helpful to both of you. You got to share and relive that experience, and then also help that person in the way you gave that information, the way you delivered it and opened up to that person. So I think it's powerful, and I think it happens I think it happens the way it's supposed to. So I don't think it's random. I think it happens every day in our lives, but do we miss it? And when we don't miss it, it's a pretty wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Good input. All right, we just have a couple more seconds. If anybody has any other thoughts or a question to ask. Nope, we're coming back. We are back on Stress Free Living. Ray Samich. We're back on Stress Free Living. Ray Samich and Ratanjit Sandhi talking today about randomness. Is there such a thing as randomness, or is everything kind of predetermined for us? And how are we supposed to act in certain times if we think it isn't random? If we think that there is a reason why something is happening, how should we best control that situation? Ratanjit, I want to go back to one of the things we just talked about, and this was this airplane conversation that, as one of our Zoom guests said, happens to him all the time, and I think it happens to a lot of us. We couldn't. Maybe it's on a plane, maybe it's sitting next to each other in a theater, or any other kind of environment. Why did you sit next to that person? And in that conversation, how do you act? It's so important that to think about this, I think most of the time when we are talking to someone, we are doing it with expectations of, if I say this, I'll get this response. This person will like me more. Or if it's somebody that we know how they act and what they've done, this will please them. This will make them think I'm smarter. This will make them think I'm more successful. This will make them think that I like the same things they like, and it'll improve our friendship. There's so many times that we are really not saying what is in us 100%. We're saying it through a filter of what will make this relationship better, what will make this friendship better, this spousal relationship better, whatever it is. What'll make the kids think more of me so that they will listen to me and turn out the way I want my kids to turn out, et cetera, et cetera. When it's a random conversation, the chances of me ever seeing or hearing from this person again really changes that situation, because I have no intentions whatsoever. I am not saying things that I think she wants to hear. I'm not saying things that will help me or, further me along in that relationship. I'm trying to be pure. I'm trying to be what I would say from the heart, but maybe more appropriately from the soul, share meaningful guidance as this one blip in time happens when the two of us are connected. Is there a lesson in that to be learned, that so much of what we do with others is intended to help us instead of help them? So much of what we calculate in our life is meant so that we have a better life, instead of giving a better life to the people that we encounter. Is this, am I clear in what I'm asking on this? It just seemed that those random moments bring out kind of the true us.
Not really, Ray.
No?
Yeah, you are more part in because of who you have become. You have more focus on helping people. You are normally when in the plane, people meet randomly new strangers. They don't have
Right.
conversations. Many of them sit through 10 hours of flight and don't even talk. And when they talk about their thing, who are they, what do they do, and how much money they have, and this and that. Basically, all ego-based. Hardly, we are very few of us are able to connect our intellectual brain to the power within us, which is pure divine power, has no ego, fear, and greed in us, and enlivening power. So normally your brain is run by the human body mode. And that is because that is how we have been from childhood trained to do, and in school and college trained to do, in job trained to do, in marriage and trained to do. In all these aspects, we are all looking for what is in it for me. So in our conversation, we are either boasting about us, what I have done, who am I, and this and that, or we are talking about a situation which is kind of either political opinion or other opinion. Basically, we are showing our knowledge or showing off our opinion or wisdom or something which is all fear, ego, and greed based, driven by our human body mode. So don't compare what you see as a normal phenomena, because you are very fortunate you have able to become a vessel, as you call it, or the divine power is controlling your mind rather than you are being controlled by your human body mode, right?
That means so much to me, what you just said. Because you basically flipped the script on that completely. And I can see now what you said. Very often in those momentary conversations, it is about, well, I'll never see this person again, so let me really tell them how great I am. Let me tell them how much I've accomplished and what I've learned and how smart I am and all those kind of things. And you're right, that is kind of the way we normally do it. This opposite, totally different script is just so incredibly meaningful. It's meaningful for the person who, in your scenario, as you played it earlier, maybe was asking for some answers, maybe praying for it, maybe just hoping for it. And how do those answers get delivered? I mean, an angel doesn't come to your door and say, here's the answer. You don't get a letter from God, usually, that says this is what you should do. It kind of has to come through another human being. And so we have that opportunity to be that vessel with purity of heart, purity of soul, to really be somebody's answer. And it is very difficult to eliminate the greed and the fear and the ego from that. But if we can truly say, I'm just here to serve, I'm just here to give some answers, it's an incredibly fulfilling experience to do that and to keep the ego out of it for that moment. And I think I did. I think I was able to do that in there, because again, from my perspective, I wasn't trying to get anything out of it. I wasn't even trying to get fulfillment. That came by accident or as a result, but it wasn't the motivation. Is it that simple, Ratanjit? I mean, is it that clear to see the distinction between these two approaches and which one is the right path and which one is the ego and greed filled path? I've never thought about the clarity of those two extreme ways of handling those supposedly random conversations. Asked another way, are we supposed to be that vessel all the time, but our ego and our greed and our fear get in the way and we don't even realize that that's our purpose at any given moment?
First thing is, somebody has to clarify these three entities in us. So once I have the knowledge that in this very human body, the divine power, the universal power resides, I begin to see this human body as a temple of the divine power. And so it is not enough to just have the knowledge that this is what happens. You have to develop a habit of, because we are run by the habit, but not by the knowledge. Because that's why many intelligent, highly educated people, you find them doing stupid things because of their habits. Habit is a gift to a human being to put us into a task where the critical thinking, the brain power is not used. So it is making us more efficient to live. Because when you drive a car, you don't use your brain power to steer. You go from one place to other without knowing.
Mhm.
Your brain is thinking about so many other things. So habit, once it is formed by a section of our brain, which is called basal ganglia, and whenever it notices you do certain things repeatedly, it grasps that task and converts into a habit, spares your thinking mind. So once all these things, you eat, you get up in the morning, you have bath, you're so many things you do because you do that without effort, because they have become your habit. Whereas any new task, you have to think. And so once you develop this habit of your mind being run by the divine power, you are now constantly thinking of making a difference. You're constantly, you're not thinking of what is in it for me. That's major difference. You simply cannot switch gears and suddenly your divine power is running your show. This won't happen until you form a habit. Go ahead, Ray.
Um, I earlier I said I had two different paths. The one of the questions I had thought about before we started, and all of this so far that we've talked about is kind of like how we respond to these moments and how we have habits that allow us to do it. What about something as random as a situation where you hear a tragedy happened, a airplane crashed, a subway explosion with a train, something crazy that happened, and then you find out that this person overslept and missed the plane, or this person at the last minute was early, so he took the train before the one that exploded, or something like that, where it really does seem absolutely random. I had bought this ticket 3 months ahead, and I was supposed to be on that airplane, and because I overslept, I missed the plane, and then the plane crashes. There's nothing to do with habits on that. There's nothing to do with my choice of being ego-oriented or being, unselfish and living my life for others. It is, you have to look at that as saying, is God smiling on you that kept you off that plane? Or is science, it needs you for some other purpose to fulfill the intent of the world while you're on it? How do we explain those kind of random actions that are absolutely life-changing, because we wouldn't be here if we were on that plane or on that train? What's your thoughts on that? That's not controlled by us at all. Is it controlled by the divine?
The overall, there are basic laws, universal laws, and your consequence of doing certain things. So we don't understand all those things. Nobody has a simple answer to that. But ultimately, because you are not on the plane, you are alive. There are many reasons for you not to be on the plane. It could be sleeping, or you had missed the plane, or whatever it is. But if you were on the plane, you will have the consequence of being on the plane. So this is not really random. It is designed by the laws around you and within you, and based on those conditions and laws, you happen to miss the plane. And it is very normal way to explain that. It is very difficult, but ultimately it is all part of the rules and regulations which are implanted in the universe by the universal laws. Right?
So let me try to understand this. I get it as a result. I mean, it wasn't like suddenly in that scenario, the person that was supposed to be on the plane got zapped and found themselves in the lobby, okay, instead. So it wasn't a supernatural situation. It wasn't a miracle. It wasn't some crazy thing that suddenly took them off the plane. There were a series of things that happened. The alarm clock didn't go off, and as a result, you didn't wake up, and then you thought you'd still make it, but the traffic was heavy and you couldn't get through the traffic, or you got bogged down going through TSA, so you lost another 10 minutes there that you shouldn't have. I mean, you can explain these real world things that happened or didn't happen that caused that. So from that perspective, I see it's not random, because there's a series of actual real life things that, through the laws of nature, the discipline of the world, these things didn't fall in place, so you ended up not getting on the plane. I get that. But what about the fact that all of those series of things happened? I mean, if you, and I've flown a lot of my life. So, there's times that getting to the airport, I'm late, but TSA is real quick, or I have no problem at the ticket counter, or, I have no problem boarding. There's other times that I'm there plenty early, and yet I get bogged down someplace else. I mean, the fact that these conditions all happened in a negative way that prevented somebody from getting on that plane, isn't there some randomness to that? Isn't there some intervention, divine intervention, that said, I'm going to make you late. I'm not going to have your alarm go off. I'm going to have you run into traffic. I'm going to have you have problems at the airport. I'm going to have the plane leave on time, which they never do, but this one's going to leave on time. It seems to be some divine intervention with a whole series of things that had to be controlled by some power to make me miss that plane.
Basically, we don't realize we are all interconnected. And somehow or other, we affect everything else. So it's a huge, complicated machinery. There are so many millions of parts in that machinery. And one nut become loose and the whole machine goes berserk, right? All these other parts are working. They all need to work in a harmony for that machine to work. So similarly, all of us, we are all affected by, when we are talking, when we talk good words, we are creating a vibration which is going to affect the environment. When we are talking bad words, we are angry. So that is going to affect the other person who is not even listening to this. There was an article in New York Times about 15 years ago or so. It was talking about how we affect people who are thousands of miles away. We don't even know them, because we are all interconnected. These are all electronic waves which are created by our action or our thinking or our words. Everything creates a reaction which eventually affects all of us. We only see the physical things which our eyes can only see. There are so many things which our eyes cannot see. Ultraviolet lights our eyes cannot see. You know what? A dog can listen, we can listen. We have the capacity of our five senses very, very limited. We can only see and hear and touch and feel and smell very limited things. So these data gathering instrument which we have, five senses, are very limited. So we'll never know the real truth. And that is why, based on what we know out of these five senses, we're trying to make sense of things, which we will never be able to do that, right?
But we're trying. This is stress-free living, trying to understand randomness, trying to understand if it's really kind of up to us how our life works out, or if it's all predetermined or some hybrid combination. That's what we're discussing today on this edition of Stress-Free Living. We're going to continue that and kind of wrap it all up when we come back in just a moment. Please stay with us. All right. Lots of different thoughts on the table, but if you've got one or two more to add into the last few minutes, you have the floor. You're welcome to ask a question that I can ask Ratanjit. Well, not much here from the crowd today, Ratanjit. We're on our own.
Let's ask the youngest member of our team. Sahil, are we making any sense, or are we just filling time?
No, I think you're making quite a lot of sense. I'm just trying to absorb your discussion, really, because there's a lot of good points mentioned, and the nature of randomness in itself can be quite bizarre. So I think I'm just trying to cope with that.
Yeah.
This is certainly a topic. It's certainly a topic that we can think about after the show. Definitely.
Yeah.
Not talking all of it through, but if somebody has something to add now, we got a couple seconds.
Dr. Singh?
Everything is fine. I'm satisfied.
All right, thank you. We love Dr. Jackji. He tells us when we're good. He tells us when we're not making sense. All right, we're about to come back. Ratanjit will have about 5 minutes.
Uh-oh.
We're back on Stress-Free Living. Ratanjit Sandhi, yours truly, Ray Samich, with you today, talking about the randomness of life. Is life random? Is it predetermined? How much control do we actually have over what goes on in our life? Ratanjit, I think it's been an interesting, in-depth conversation today that I'm anxious to go back and actually re-listen and kind of understand again what has been discussed. But in the last few minutes that we have left, what is your honest feeling about the decisions that we make in our life? Are we ultimately deciding things that have been pre-decided for us, and we're just having a chance to fall in line with what was meant to be? We're choosing a new job, we're choosing a spouse, we're choosing whether to have another child, we're choosing where to live, in what city. These are major decisions. These are life-changing decisions for somebody. Is that script written and we're just going along and making the decisions that follow up, and it feels good in our heart, feels good in our conscience, feels good in our gut, so we're saying, yep, this is the way it is? Is that part of this whole conversation, that our script is written and we're either choosing to follow the script, or in a crazy moment we suddenly say, no, I'm going to move across the country, I'm going to not marry this person 10 minutes before I'm supposed to be in the church? What are your thoughts on big life-changing decisions like that?
If you make all your decision in the human body mode, decisions are going to be controlled by what is in it for me. Whether it is a marriage or moving or doing everything. So one can ask, what else is there? It's about me. I have to serve. I have to take care of me. So in the human body mode, that is what is going to happen, because you consider yourself to be a separate entity. You have to take care of this human body, which is destined to die. It's born to die. It is here only for a short period of time. When we think, our mind is given the control to the divine power which is enlivening me and us. This amazing divine power lives forever. It has no insecurity, no fear, no greed. So in that mode, it is only thinking or making a decision to serve the divine power in you, in me, in everyone else. So two thought process. One is what is in it for me. Other is how do I make a difference to the world around me. So when you are focused on making a difference, you feel better. And you achieve successes. You have better relationship. You have higher material wealth. Everything falls in place. But instead of, that wisdom is not being good or bad. I'm a good person, I'm going to do better. That is also ego. So your ego only dies when your brain is controlled by the universal power which is enlivening you. And in only that mode, the right kind of decision you will make to choose the work you want to do, the things you want to happen. Instead of picking a life partner, when you are in the human body mode, you are looking for the beauty and the wealth and those things, what I'm going to gain with her company, with his company. When you are in the oneness mode, in the divine mode, you are choosing a partner which is going to help you add value, making a difference, you have the commonality of mission and understanding. So all the knowledge which we gather to make ourselves better is limited by our five senses. We will never know enough, but we can always add value. We can always serve the purpose we are here for, to make a difference. And in the process of making a difference, yes, we'll gain knowledge, we'll understand, we become a better student, and we will selflessly make a difference, which is going to make us happy. Ray.
Ratanjit, we'll leave that as the last word. Thank you so much for making a very complicated subject a lot clearer for us. And we thank all of you for being a part of our program. However you're watching or listening, we hope we added value to your life. Remember, we're all playing the same game. Have a great day. All right, everyone. Thank you for following the rules of understanding how we have the radio segments and then we interact. Now it's your chance to interact with us 100%. If you'd like to share any thoughts or have any questions for Ratanjit, now's the time to do it. Glad you're with us today.
I have a question
Open.
for Ratanjit.
Go ahead, Brian.
So, Ratanjit, we met and it was not random. I mean, initially, years ago when we met was through a series of things that happened in life. And then we were introduced and became friends. And I'm thankful for that. I'm grateful for that because it's been quite a lesson. And these things happen for reason and for purpose. In my journey, I think back to the most recent meeting, meeting before last, you said to me that I'm a student and that I listen closely. You picked out a few things and you mentioned it to me. And I've thought about that a lot. And the things that we talked about and which you just described about the inner strength and oneness and the energy and body mode and so on. There's people in my business world that I've surrounded myself with. And I guess the question is, some of them operate 100% in human body mode. They're not interested in making a difference. They're interested in themselves. And because of their education and their skill and their successfulness, I think I missed some of those things. And so coming full circle to what this is about in randomness, I think we met so that I would recognize that. And you know, the books that I've been reading and the things that we've been doing together, it keeps coming back to what is supposed to happen for me. And so when you ask the question, is it random? I'm going to say it again. I don't believe so. I think things are, you bump into people, you meet people, things happen in life because if your good energy is there, but when the bad energy comes in, maybe you miss that opportunity. Maybe you miss that message that you were supposed to receive. And when you open yourself up, and I guess this is the question, when you open yourself up and you allow it to happen, it's very, very powerful, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. I asked you a question one time in a text, and I've been waiting for you to answer it, and you just did in this, because I just got I guess it just woke me up to look at things a little bit differently than I think the way I was understanding it. So thank you.
Thank you for being with us, Brian. You add a lot to our show. Amorous, it's been a while since you have communicated with us, since you've seen one of our programs.
I know
What do you-
it brought me back when you said 20
Yeah.
years. I was like, oh yeah, it kind of has been 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was good to hear the similar concepts from 20 years ago. And yeah, I over my life too, I think things aren't random. It always seems like when things don't go my way, what I think is my way, when I look back at it a few years from then, it's always like, oh, if that didn't happen the way I didn't want it to, then this wouldn't have happened. So yeah, it seems like it's not random.
Yeah. So any question you have?
Anybody have any additional thoughts on this or questions about it?
Rekha is quiet today.
Yes,
Rekha,
she
you need
is.
the feedback.
So can I ask? I have a question, sir.
Sure.
Please.
Is this not all randomness then? Why those innocent, poor, just being killed, tormented, and tortured? They have no fault of their own. They are just sleeping, and the bomb falls on them, and they die. Is this just part of the randomness, or there is calculated move by the divine force that they need to be killed like that?
Again, when you think yourself to be separate, we think of these people dying. When you think of ourselves to be one, a portion of us dies. So we are hurt in oneness, we are equally hurt by them. By our portion is when my hand is injured, my whole body suffers. So we are one. So the consequences of what I'm doing sometimes has to be paid by somebody else. So that is the irony of this thing. Although we see that this person hasn't done anything, why that person is suffering? Because they are part of me. So when I am not looking and walking and somehow either I fall and my hand breaks, the fault is of the legs. They are walking in the wrong direction. Why my hand is paying the penalty? Because it's all one.
But in the name of this oneness, the hand is suffering because of I. So you can justify this because of oneness, but what to do? What is torments? What is tortures of innocence? Why the things are made like that? It is very difficult to understand this divine play.
Yeah, it's difficult to understand because we are thinking in absence of oneness, we are trying to decipher oneness.
So how to go in that oneness? Because I'm not made like that, because I can go in that oneness, that concept, that interiorizing, inner engineering, that is not possible for me in this life, despite my trying my best.
So
yes.
So there are two rooms. There's two binoculars which are looking at the star. One is focused on one thing, and other is focused on other part. So both are describing different objects. They are looking through the same binoculars, two binoculars, and they're fighting. I cannot see this. And this guy says, "But I see this." But they are looking through two different binoculars. They are going to see two different things. So change have the same binocular to understand until you somehow park into oneness. You are not going to understand what I'm saying. So regardless of how long we discuss this, you say, no, I cannot park myself in oneness. How do I understand this? You cannot. Until you park yourself in oneness, until you understand oneness.
That is the problem. How to understand that oneness? That is what I am saying. How to enter that mode?
Yeah, again, it's a, you know, one, you see a brain surgeon and he's trying to explain what is wrong with your brain. And he's trying to explain that. You say, but I cannot understand. How do I become a brain surgeon? You cannot become a brain surgeon in 2 minutes. The brain surgeon has spent 10 years of his life to understand the concept of brain. So similarly, you become a student of oneness and roll into understanding oneness, and then only you will understand oneness. It's not that by I can answer 4 questions and you will suddenly park yourself into oneness.
What might help Harjinder is our YouTube channel. There's a lot of other sources. I'm not saying that we're the only one, but our YouTube channel is called Stress Free Living Radio. There's about 110 shows up there now. And, you know, you can really pick and choose which topics you want, and I think learn oneness or try to better understand oneness through that library. YouTube channel, it's called Stress Free Living Radio. That might help.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ratanjit, isn't it creating those good habits, and as you described earlier in the show, that we create these habits that hinder us, but to create the oneness habit and develop it, it takes time. Isn't that what you're saying?
Yeah, you any habit, you do certain things consecutively at the same time, it becomes a habit. So as I have described many times, this exercise which you do in the morning, stand in front of the mirror and see the power which is enlivening you inside this human body, and then begin to see when you come out of that exercise, same power in others' eyes enlivening you, you begin to focus on that power. So when you do this exercise, initially the thought process may remain with you for half an hour or 1 hour. And rest of the day, you go back into your old habits. So until you do this exercise every day, and until the whole day, you carry this thought of seeing oneness in others, divine power, enlivening force present in others and everyone, and your mind will not be transpositioned into the oneness mode.
Thank you. Create that habit 39 times.
Anybody else have any thoughts? Reka, you open your mic.
Yeah, I was gonna say I agree with what Brian was saying and Amaris on, I definitely don't think that there's randomness in the world. I think everything happens for a reason, and everyone we sit next to, every conversation we have, it always for a reason to connect you to someone or something. But I do sometimes still struggle when the randomness is not there, if that makes any sense. Like sometimes if I have like a really big business decision to make, and I usually kind of wait for the universe to kind of reveal the answer of whatever it is I'm meant to do, right? Or whatever the answer is that will tell me what the next thing is, or the decision that I need to make is. Sometimes that answer isn't crystal clear, not and so I still struggle sometimes with how to make a decision when the answer is not clearly given to me from the universe, or that random occurrence doesn't happen, and it happens all the time, like that. I'm very grateful for that. But in the moments that it doesn't happen, or the answer isn't super clear, I do kind of waver a little bit, and like, okay, like now, like then I get, there's like a fear that comes into me, because what I fear then is, if the answer isn't crystal clear in front of me, does that mean the decision I'm about to make is going to come from the mind and not from the power that enlivens us? So I still sometimes struggle when I don't have a clear answer in front of me. I struggle with fear of the decision I'm about to make coming from my mind and not from the universal force.
Yeah, that's, what happens is, many times we want to make a decision in a business, and we have to make so many decisions. Many of these decisions are academic or administrative. They are not driven by adding value. So those administrative decisions will not empower the divine power to come into play.
So then what do you do when you have decisions to make?
So those decisions you are making, basically addressing the human body mode. All our administrative decisions are basically to have a control, certain things to go certain ways. They are directed by our ego, or ownership, or protection, or fear.
So does that tell us then that we're totally off track, and we need to step back and rethink the entire reason for the decision?
When I started the new direction based on oneness in my company, we threw the rules and regulation out the window. We were only controlled by our purpose of adding value. If that was missing, there was no reason to decide these other elements.
So the intention kind of has to shift.
Yeah. Intention is to serve the universal power, which is present in you and everybody you come across, and the environment. So your decision cannot harm one entity and serve others.
Rika, I just didn't know if you said intention or attention, but I think it's both. I think our intention has to change, and I think our attention has to change too. I think in those scenarios, what are we paying attention to that really ultimately matters? And then what is our intention to be able to do this? I think both of those are, and I'm guilty of that too. When I was listening to what you were saying in terms of like, there's no obvious answer. Why is there no obvious answer here? Why am I waiting for something to fall in place and it doesn't fall in place? And I think that's, Ratanjit's right again. I think it's intention. What's the intention behind the change? And what are we paying attention to that is maybe have us misfocused?
So I have a question to finish with that. Is Ratanjit, so what if others' intentions that you come across aren't good? They're not pure, and it's not with the universal power. How do you deal with that? Because a lot of times you don't know.
When in your organization, if you are trying to accommodate others' feeling, others' ego, others' fear, and all that, it's like you're making a cup of coffee, and you want certain ingredients in your coffee, but this person like this and this person like this. So if you keep on adding what others like in your coffee, that coffee will not work for you. It's a very difficult decision. When my company, when I started in 73 and up to 80, I was following the protocols of a business school, business development, and I had all the procedures, all the titles, all the matters, all spelled out, and working and consulting people were advising me what to do and all that. So in 1980, I was facing bankruptcy. And when in 80, I fired everyone and brought in fresh college students. And every Saturday from that onwards, we talked about what is oneness. And based on their understanding of oneness, we constructed our mission, vision, path on our operating values. And we became tremendously successful. We didn't have a business plan, but we have operating principles. So when business plan is replaced by operating principle, you operate in oneness. You begin to operate in oneness.
So if you have that element where you were forced to recognize that and let everybody go and rebuild, but you need to put a stop to that element of that negativity or just personal self-serving. You need to put a stop to it.
Supposing you bought a company which makes a gadget, very popular, but somehow in the process of manufacturing, maybe 20% have the defect, and you guarantee your customer that they find defective merchandise, you will replace it. Now, until you modify your equipment to eliminate that 20% defective merchandise, you cannot grow by simply replacing the bad parts.
Very wise. Thank you. Yeah. So
The hill has. I'm sorry.
No,
go ahead.
In my company, there's an opportunity for something right now. And my vision for all of us is to make a difference, to do something that is for the greater good in what we're bringing to market. But I'm realizing that some around me, it's financial gain purely and for self-serving. And that's coming to the surface, and it's been very difficult for me. So
most of us are always part in what is in it for me, self-gain, because this is what our parents teach us, this is what our school teaches, this is what our everybody, be successful. And success is measured by the money.
Yeah, and I think I've been parenting a lot and coddling a lot with some of these individuals, trying to make that coffee good for them all the time, just as you described. I think I'm doing that in some cases. That's why I asked the question, because it's not settling because it doesn't feel right. And that's why I'm questioning it so much. And
in your company, you have business meetings. You talk about the business and all that. So how many meetings you have to clarify what is oneness? None. So that is why when we changed the company's operating people, brought new people, whole Saturday was devoted to understanding oneness.
well, as I described that in a meeting, I did lose the attention of a lot of people.
Oh, you will, because these old people are parked in what is in it for me. They cannot be retrained. It will take 20 years to retrain them. You don't have the time. That is why I changed the whole team to the fresh college graduate who has zero experience of running a business, least contaminated. They were able to understand.
So I always have something to say in viewing things and so forth, but in those meetings, I didn't say a lot. I just watched and listened. And that's a lesson in itself, but watched and listened, and it pretty much spoke for itself. And that wanting to continue that discussion, there were some that didn't want to continue that discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sahil has had his hand raised for a long time. He's still with us?
My hands are starting to hurt a little bit, Ray. I'm only kidding, sorry. I have a question on the concept of randomness, and I hope you can provide some clarity on this. So suppose I'd like to travel from London to Paris tomorrow, and I'm about to select an airline for my travel tomorrow. And I select a budget airline. I'm aware that this airline buys used Boeing aircrafts, and they aren't of the best quality and has worn machinery. Secondly, their company policy is not really customer centric, and they're just aimed at making profits. And thirdly, I'm aware that they recruit fresh college graduates from Aviation Academy who might have just passed their exams in COVID times. So there's a high probability of this airplane not even making it past the English Channel, and all of my co-passengers and I could be swimming in 20 minutes. So this could happen tomorrow. So isn't this majorly a lapse of my judgment and intellect, and not just a random occurrence? And no stroke of divine could have prevented this from happening, no matter how good of a person I am.
Absolutely. That is why all these things need to be put into your equation. So that you have to reduce the chances that you already know is going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, in my opinion, if I can offer this, I mean, I hear exactly what you're saying, but at the same time, that's why we set up minimum standards of performance, especially in something like the airline industry, where, maybe it is, maybe they are the worst in the group. So for that reason, the likelihood is higher than it would be for the best in the group. But they've already passed the tests. So you've eliminated the biggest fears. It's kind of like what they say, what do you call the medical student who had the lowest score on the test? You call him doctor. Okay. I mean, he still passed the test and he had the lowest score. And there were people that had hundreds and he had a 75, but he still passed the test. You still call him doctor. So I hear what you're saying in terms of that, but I mean, a lot of life, the people, the airplane designers that didn't make the cut, they're no longer in business. The pilots that couldn't pass the tests are no longer have a license. there's still kind of a minimum in life that we have to tolerate. And I think where it gets really sensitive is the political issues, where we know manufacturers are putting all kinds of chemicals into the foods that we eat that are harming us, for example, and yet it still passes the test. So those are still being sold, even though we know that there's harm in there. So I think those are the real sensitive areas where you say, how do we fix this? Because we know that there's a ton of bad food being sold out there that people are consuming. But I mean, when it comes to an airline and stuff, I mean, if you're flying on a regulated airplane with a licensed pilot, Ratanjit, don't you think that there's still a certain expectation that says if this met the guidelines, it shouldn't leave you swimming in the water?
There are two paradigms. One is what is in it for me, the body mode. And what is the other paradigm is the divine mode, that's at the highest value. Now, this what is in it for me paradigm, if all the organizations, federal aviation or rule-setting agencies are part in what is in it for me, they can be bought. And the rules and regulations, which would be somewhere compromised. And that is what we see in our universe. Food and Drug Administrations approve of many drugs which should not be approved. Hospital practice many methods which should not be practiced. Many operations are performed which should not be performed, because they're all part in highest profit-making paradigm. What is it in for me? If they were part in providing the highest value to humanity, to serving, automatically standards would be different. So no matter how many rules and regulations you implement, they will be always compromised.
Right, thank you.
I wish I could argue with you on that, but I can't. Exactly right.
Yeah, until our education system is changed, until our upbringing of the human child is changed, and we cultivate this habit right from the beginning to think and work in oneness paradigm, adding the highest value, the whole society will change. We do not need rules and regulation and the police and jails and these corrections facilities to lock up people.
All right, we've opened up.
You know what? The
Cancer worms here.
purest thing supposed to be the scriptures, when they were part in human body mode, they became religions. They are fighting with each other. They are all supposed to be one.
All right. Anybody else have any thoughts today? I think we're all talked out. Thank you, everybody. It's been a very interesting conversation. We appreciate you all being here. You're all welcome every week. We'll be back next Saturday. And please join us and bring a friend.